I should have gone home earlier that night. If I had, maybe I wouldn't have been standing on the cold shoreline at 2:14 a.m., staring at the burning trail of a private jet slicing through the sky like a wounded star. But fate has terrible timing, and I was the kind of idiot who liked late night walks to clear her mind. My name is Ella Marin, and until that night, my life was painfully ordinary. Quiet job, quiet routine, quiet heartbreaks I didn't talk about. Nothing dangerous, nothing extraordinary. But destiny doesn't care about quiet people. The distant roar hit first, low, rumbling, like thunder rolling across the lake. I looked up just in time to see a streak of flames cutting downward, fast, far too fast to be anything but a disaster. What the? The jet tilted, one wing snapping in the air like a broken bone. A deafening boom followed, echoing across the water as the craft plunged toward the surface. Panic punched through me. Oh my God, oh my God. My feet were already running, gravel and dirt flying under my shoes, as the jet hit the lake with a violent splash. The impact sent a wave of freezing water surging onto the shore, soaking my legs. Steam rose from the crash site, lights flickering beneath the surface. The jet was sinking. Fast. Someone could still be alive. Someone could be drowning right now. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just ran straight into the water. The cold hit like a fist, stealing my breath, but adrenaline dragged me forward. The jet's tail was barely visible, glowing red underwater like a dying ember. I swam harder, my arms burning, lungs screaming. And then I saw him. A man, or the outline of one, pressed against the shattered window. Trapped. I dove down, teeth chattering, pushing through debris until my fingers caught the edge of the door. It was jammed, completely sealed by the impact. Come on, I muttered through clenched teeth. Come on. I braced my feet on the sinking fuselage and yanked with everything I had. The metal groaned, screamed, finally tore open just enough for the man to push through. He drifted out, unconscious or close to it, dark hair swirling around his face in the freezing water. His body was heavy, heavier than I expected. Stay with me, I gasped, hooking my arm around his chest and kicking upward. We broke the surface together. He wasn't breathing. My heart nearly stopped. Hey, don't do this. I slapped his cheek lightly. Come on. I pulled him toward the shore, fighting the current, my muscles trembling from the cold. When we finally dragged onto the sand, I collapsed beside him, coughing. He didn't move. No, breathe. Please breathe. I pressed my palms to his chest and pushed, rhythmically, desperately, counting through chattering teeth. Water spilled from his mouth. His body jolted. He gasped sharply, inhaling like someone ripping back into life. Relief crashed through me so hard I nearly cried. He blinked slowly, eyes unfocused, chest rising and falling in ragged heaves. Why, you're okay, I whispered breathlessly. You're alive. Just stay still. He turned his head toward me. Barely, but that was all it took. Even half drowned, even dazed, even shivering on wet sand, he radiated something that made my pulse jump. Power. Not loud, not dramatic, just cold, commanding presence. But he was too weak to speak. Don't move, I said softly. I'll call for help. Except, of course, my phone was dead. If there was ever a perfect moment for my battery to betray me, this was it. I cursed under my breath and stood, scanning the shoreline. Stay here, I'll get someone. My wrist was grabbed. Not hard, not threatening, but enough to stop me. I turned back. His eyes, dark, sharp, impossibly intense even in pain, were locked onto mine. Don't leave, he rasped. I froze. His voice was gravel and ice, strong even when broken, a voice that commanded without trying. I'm not leaving, I whispered. I'm right here. His grip loosened, fingers sliding from my skin as his strength gave out again. I stayed kneeling beside him until his breathing steadied. The cold wind whipped across the lake, freezing my clothes to my skin, but I didn't move. Whoever he was, something in my gut told me he wasn't safe. Not normal. Not someone who simply fell from the sky. But he was alive, and I was the only reason why. After what felt like forever, maybe minutes, maybe hours, he opened his eyes again, clearer this time. What's your name? I asked quietly. His lips parted. Alexander. The name shivered through me. Heavy and dangerous. Alexander what? He hesitated. A single, long breath escaped him. Vasiliev. My chest tightened. Not with fear. Yeah, but with a recognition I didn't want to admit. I had heard that name before. Everyone had. The Vasiliev family wasn't just rich. They weren't just powerful. They were whispered about. Feared. Untouchable. Mafia. My pulse raced. But before I could react, he added, voice soft, hoarse. You saved my life. His eyes held mine. Cold. Intimidating. But shifting, just for a second, into something softer. I won't forget. I swallowed hard. You're safe now, I said. No one is touching you tonight. I didn't know then how ironic those words would become. Because by the time the first hint of sunrise touched the horizon, my house would be surrounded, not by police, not by reporters, but by 5 black SUVs, engines running, men stepping out with guns drawn, searching for the woman who had saved their boss. Me. And nothing about my life would ever be quiet again. I barely slept that night. After dragging Alexander from the lake, after watching him breathe again, after helping him sit up and keeping him awake so he wouldn't slip into hypothermia, I walked him to the small shed near the shoreline. It wasn't much, but it was sheltered, hidden, and warm enough once I found a blanket. He refused the hospital. Not politely, more like a command wrapped in exhaustion. No hospitals, he had whispered, gripping my wrist again with surprising strength. No police. No authorities. There was something in his tone that made me nod without questioning it. Maybe it was the way he said it, not desperate, not scared, but lethal. The kind of voice that wasn't used to explaining itself to anyone. I convinced him to rest in the shed only after he couldn't stand anymore. His body was shaking, skin cold, breath shallow. You'll freeze, I whispered. He looked at me with eyes sharp even in darkness. You shouldn't be helping me. Yeah, well, I murmured, pressing the blanket around him. You'd be dead if I wasn't. His jaw tightened, almost like the reminder angered him, or humbled him. I wasn't sure which. When he finally drifted into unconscious sleep, I sat beside him, leaning against the wall, shivering. My clothes were still wet, and my teeth kept knocking together. The adrenaline that had carried me through the rescue was dying off, leaving fear in its place. Who the hell had I just saved? The name echoed in my mind, Alexander Vasiliev, the man whose empire stretched across 2 continents, the man whose enemies filled entire cemeteries, the man whose reputation made grown criminals lower their eyes, a mafia boss, a real one, not the dramatic movie kind, the dangerous, cold, untouchable kind. And he was sleeping 6 inches away from me. At some point, I must have drifted off. My head dropped forward, and the next thing I remember was my alarm. The shrill ringing from my bag jolted me awake, so violently I nearly fell over. 7:02 a.m. The shed was filled with the faint gray light of dawn. My entire body felt stiff, cold, and sore. When I turned toward him, he was gone. The blanket was folded neatly where he'd been lying. The shed door was cracked open. A faint imprint in the sand outside showed footprints leading toward the road. I stared in disbelief. He left? Just like that? After everything? Part of me felt relieved. Another part, some strange part buried deep, felt off, as if some connection had begun in those dark hours, and now it had been abruptly severed. Good, I muttered to myself. Good. This is good. You don't need a mafia boss in your life, Ella. You need normal, boring, predictable. A sound cut through my self-lecture. A deep, heavy rumble. I froze. It wasn't one rumble. It was multiple. Engines, not cars. SUVs, black, heavy, tactical grade, moving together, coming fast. Oh no, I whispered. I sprinted out of the shed, heart pounding, and charged up the path toward my street. Please be wrong. Please don't be what I think. But the second I reached the top of the hill, the breath left my lungs. 5 black SUVs lined the street like a scene from a mob movie. No police markings, no plates, just matte black armored bodies, and tinted windows so dark they swallowed the sunrise. My house sat in the middle of them, small, harmless, absolutely out of place. Men stepped out, not casually, not like neighbors. These men moved with precision, black coats, tactical boots, guns holstered at their sides. Eyes scanning, checking corners, communicating in low Russian whispers. They weren't looking for trouble. They were looking for something specific. For someone. For me. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. Panic surged up my throat. I considered running, really considered it, but before I could move, one of the SUV's doors opened. A man stepped out. He wasn't Alexander. He was bigger, broader, jaw squared like granite, expression unreadable. His eyes locked onto me instantly. My heart stopped. He spoke Russian into an earpiece, then nodded sharply toward me. Ella Marin? I swallowed. Why, yes. He didn't smile, didn't soften, didn't greet me politely. He simply said, voice deep and clipped, "You're coming with us." My legs refused to move. I'm not going anywhere with. You saved our boss. He stepped closer, and he gave orders to bring you. Now, my stomach twisted. Where is he? I whispered. A muscle ticked in the man's jaw. Alive because of you. That is all you need to know. He beckoned me forward with a gloved hand. I didn't move. I couldn't. I have work, I blurted. I can't. A cold, humorless breath escaped him. Your work can wait. Your life cannot. Cold, intimidating, controlled. They were just like him. My pulse hammered. Am I in trouble? No, he said. If you were in trouble, you wouldn't be standing. Not comforting. Not comforting at all. Before I could respond, another SUV door opened. Silence swept across the entire street. The men straightened, heads bowed, tension sharpened the air like knives. Because he stepped out. Alexander, alive, standing, dressed in a black coat with the collar turned up, dripping authority like cold steel. His dark hair was pushed back, his expression unreadable, eyes glacial. He looked like someone who belonged to the shadows of empires and bloodlines. But when his gaze found me, everything shifted, just for a heartbeat. His shoulders eased, his eyes softened, like the world stopped churning for him. He walked toward me slowly, controlled, each step measured. His men didn't breathe. When he finally stood in front of me, the air collapsed between us. You ran, I whispered before I could stop myself. He didn't smile. Not fully. Just a subtle, dangerous curve of his lips. I don't run, he said softly. I regroup. I stared at him, shivering. His eyes lowered to my wet clothes, still frozen from the lake. Something flared in his expression. Something that almost looked like anger. You're cold, he murmured, stepping closer. I'm fine. You're shaking. I said I'm fine. He exhaled slowly, like he was trying to control something dark inside himself. You saved my life, he said quietly. And now, I owe you both protection and answers. I swallowed. Why surround my house with this? His gaze sharpened. Because the jet crash wasn't an accident, he said. And the people who tried to kill me. His eyes drifted to my house, then back to me. Will come looking for the woman who pulled me from the water. A chill tore down my spine. In other words, he finished, his voice dropping to a deadly softness. You're not safe. Not anymore. My breath froze somewhere between my ribs. Not safe. Because of him. Because I'd pulled him out of a drowning jet. I didn't ask for this, I whispered, stepping back. I didn't sign up for any of this. Alexander watched me with the kind of stillness predators had, controlled, calculating, terrifying in its serenity. The wind tugged at his coat, but he didn't move to adjust it. He didn't look away either. I know, he said softly, which is why I'm here. His voice wasn't apologetic. Mafia bosses didn't apologize, but there was a gravity to his words that felt heavier than fear. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hide the way I trembled. Not from the cold, from everything else. This is crazy, I whispered. My neighbors, my job. What am I supposed to tell people? That a mafia convoy showed up before breakfast for a courtesy visit? One of his men shifted sharply, offended by my tone. Alexander flicked two fingers slightly. barely a gesture, and the man went still like a statue had replaced him. The control he held over them wasn't loud. It was absolute. Ella, he said, stepping closer, you will not tell anyone anything. Not today. Not until I know who survived that crash. My stomach dropped. Survived? I repeated. There were others? His jaw tightened. He didn't answer. Which was the answer? God, what had I stepped into? He moved closer again, and even though I should have backed away, I didn't. His presence was cold, powerful, carved from something older and darker than anything in my world. But when he looked at me, I felt no fear of him. Everyone else? Absolutely terrified. But him? Some part of me, illogical, reckless, felt safer when he stood near. Come with me, he said. Not demanding, not pleading, simply stating a course of action as if it were inevitable. No, I whispered. I can't just vanish with a mafia boss. You can't just pull me out of my life like this. His eyes lowered to the bruises forming on my wrist from where he'd grabbed me last night during the rescue. Unintentionally, but still. The flicker of guilt in his eyes was brief, but it was there. Your life is no longer what it was, he murmured. That's not fair. He exhaled slowly, like he was trying to choose words that wouldn't frighten me. It didn't work. When you pulled me from that jet, he said, you weren't just seen. You were targeted. My heart twisted. By who? One of the groups that want me dead, he said simply. There were no witnesses before last night. His eyes met mine, dark and intense. Now there is you. The meaning sank in like ice water. They'll come looking for you, he continued. They'll follow your routines, your patterns, your workplace, your home. His voice softened into something almost dangerous in a different way. Unless I remove you from all of it. I took a shaky breath. And take me where? His eyes held mine, unwavering. To somewhere they cannot reach you. Your territory, I whispered. Yes, I felt the world tilt under my feet. That sounds a lot like being kidnapped, I said. If I intended to kidnap you, he murmured, leaning in just a fraction, you would not be standing here negotiating. A shiver ran down my spine. He wasn't threatening me. He was stating a terrible truth. But you don't have to trust me, he said, startling me. Only trust what you saw last night. What I saw. He stepped closer until his shadow fell over me. You saw that I would rather die than let anyone harm you. My throat tightened. Did he mean the way he grabbed my wrist? The panic when I tried to leave him? The way he clung to consciousness only when I spoke to him? I wasn't ready for the heat that pooled in my chest at the memory. Before I could respond, one of his men approached. Brava activity an hour north, the man said. We intercepted chatter. They are looking for the survivor. Alexander's expression sharpened into something lethal. And the girl, he asked. The man glanced at me briefly. They believe she was with him. They're searching for towns. My blood ran cold. Alexander's jaw moved once. Barely, but the air instantly felt heavier. He turned back to me, voice lower. You are coming. Now. That wasn't a suggestion, but it wasn't cruelty either. It was something worse. Protection bordering on obsession. I need my things, I stammered. No, the man from earlier said. Yes. Alexander corrected without looking away from me. Give her 10 minutes. The man stiffened, shocked at being contradicted, but nodded. Alexander followed me as I walked to my front door. Not touching, not restraining, just close enough that the heat of him pressed against my back. Inside, my hand shook as I grabbed a small bag, phone charger, wallet, a sweater, nothing that mattered. Because suddenly none of it did. My reflection in the hallway mirror startled me. I looked pale, wide-eyed, like a ghost inside my own life. He stood behind me in the reflection, tall, immovable, watching me with that cold, unreadable intensity. Are you scared? He asked quietly. Yes, I whispered. Of me. I hesitated. No. He studied me for a long moment. Something flickered behind his eyes, something softer, something he quickly buried. Good, he said, because you need your fear for everyone else. That wasn't comforting. When we stepped back outside, the morning sun had risen properly now, painting the street gold. My innocent little neighborhood looked wrong. Too peaceful for the scene unfolding. Alexander held open the SUV door. Once you get in, he said, There is no turning back today. I figured, I whispered. You will be safe. That I promise you. And what about tomorrow? I asked. His eyes burned into mine. I do not make promises I cannot keep. That was terrifyingly honest. I climbed in. He followed, sliding beside me, the door clicking shut with a finality that shivered through me. Engine started. The convoy pulled away. My house grew smaller in the rear window until it disappeared entirely. I wasn't going home again. Not for a long time. Maybe ever. Alexander sat beside me, silent, deadly, impossibly composed. But when our eyes met, he looked at me the way a storm looks at the horizon it's about to claim. Soft, but only for me. Dangerous for anyone else. And this was only the beginning. The farther we drove, the more unreal everything became. My small town disappeared behind us, replaced by long stretches of empty road and thick forest. The sunrise filtered through the trees in soft ribbons of gold, but it did nothing to warm the cold not forming in my stomach. Alexander sat beside me, silent and impossibly composed, like the night's chaos hadn't touched him at all. No signs of injury, no trembling, no shock. The only proof he'd been inside a sinking jet hours earlier were faint cuts along his jaw and the exhaustion shadowing his eyes. But even exhausted, he looked carved from steel. The SUV was silent except for the hum of the engine. His men up front didn't speak. No one did. The air felt too heavy, too fragile, like the wrong sound would shatter it. I finally broke first. Where are we going? Alexander didn't look at me immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the road ahead, his thumb rhythmically tapping against his knee. A small habit, but the only sign that he wasn't entirely calm. To one of my residences, he finally said. One. I repeated. He glanced at me. Did you expect a Mafia boss to own only one? My mouth opened, then closed again. Right. Stupid question. What kind of residence? Secure. That doesn't tell me anything. He inhaled through his nose, dropping his gaze momentarily, as if weighing how much to reveal. It is isolated, protected, outside of civilian traffic. No one will find you there. Sounds like a bunker. His lips twitched, not a smile, but the ghost of amusement. You could call it that. Great. Fantastic. Exactly what every girl dreams about, being escorted at sunrise to a Mafia bunker by a convoy of heavily armed men. So, what happens when we get there? I asked. You rest, he said simply. You recover from the shock. You warm up, eat, sleep. That doesn't answer my question. His jaw moved slightly, tightening for half a second before relaxing. You deserve clarity, he admitted quietly. I will give it to you, but not while you are shaking. My breath caught. I looked down. My fingers were trembling. So were my legs. I hadn't even realized. He saw before I did. I looked out the window, embarrassed. I'm not shaking because I'm scared. It's just cold. Do not lie to me, he murmured. You saved my life. You do not need to pretend. Heat prickled behind my eyes, frustration, fear, exhaustion. I'm not pretending, I snapped. He didn't get angry. He didn't flinch. He simply shifted closer, his voice dropping into something terrifyingly soft. You are overwhelmed. Not weak. Not dramatic. Human. The words hit deeper than I expected. I swallowed hard. I'm just processing everything. That is allowed. Allowed. As if he held the authority to decide what I was permitted to feel. But somehow it didn't sound arrogant. It sounded like reassurance disguised as command. I pulled my sweater tighter around myself, trying to focus on something other than the way his presence filled the SUV like gravity. What about the people who tried to kill you? I asked. Do they know I was the one who saved you? Yes. His answer was immediate. Sharp. Cold. My pulse stumbled. How? Because they were watching the crash site, he said. And because they have eyes in places they shouldn't. I stared at him. You mean? Yes, he cut in. Someone saw you. Then, oh my God, they saw my face. They know where I live. They know too much, he said quietly, which is why you cannot go back. I pressed a shaking hand to my mouth. This was real. So painfully real. I don't understand why they would care about me. I'm nobody. His expression changed, barely, but enough. Ella, he said, leaning forward slightly. You pulled me out of a jet while I was drowning. You fought metal and fire and water with your bare hands. His gaze locked onto mine, intense. Do not call yourself nobody. I swallowed, speechless, but he wasn't finished. To save me is one thing, he said. But for them, it means you interfered. His voice dropped into something dark. People who interfere are never ignored. A chill swept down my spine. So I'm a liability, I whispered. To them. His eyes softened, just a fraction. Not to me. I wasn't sure what that meant, but the weight of his tone made my pulse flutter, helplessly. The SUV slowed, turning off the main road and onto a narrower, winding path surrounded by towering pine trees. The convoy followed tightly, maintaining formation. No gaps, no vulnerabilities. This place, I whispered. Is this really safe? It is under my control, he replied, which apparently was supposed to mean safer than any police-protected hotel or witness protection bunker. The deeper we drove, the more isolated it became. No houses, no signs, nothing but the soft rise of mist above the ground. Eventually, the trees parted, and I saw it. A sprawling structure sat nestled against a cliff edge, modern, glass and concrete, surrounded by a high-security fence. Tall pines framed the perimeter. Cameras tracked our approach. A fortress disguised as a mansion. The SUVs rolled through a massive steel gate that slid open silently. Men appeared along the perimeter, armed, disciplined, watching. I exhaled shakily. This is your residence. One of them, Alexander repeated. The SUV stopped at the front steps. Before I could move, before I could decide what to do next, Alexander opened his door and stepped out. Then he turned to me, not ordering, not commanding, just waiting. I felt the weight of the moment press into my chest. When I stepped out, the cold air hit me immediately. He didn't touch me, but he stood close enough that his presence warmed the space between us. This is where you will stay, he said quietly. For now. For how long? I whispered. His gaze lowered to mine. Until you are no longer in danger. And when will that be? He held my eyes. When I finished what the jet crash was meant to start. I swallowed. And what's that? His voice dropped to a chilling softness. A war. The wind stilled. The trees stilled. Everything stilled. He took one step closer, enough that I felt his breath brush my cheek. You saved the wrong man, he whispered. And now fate has tied you to me. His eyes darkened. I do not let go of what fate gives me. My heart stopped, because I knew, whatever was coming next, I wasn't ready for it. If the outside of Alexander's fortress felt intimidating, the inside was another world entirely. Warm, polished stone floors, soft amber lighting, high ceilings with iron beams. A fire crackled in a long hearth along the wall, its glow reflecting in glass panels and casting moving shadows. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a sanctuary built for a man who'd forgotten how to rest. Alexander walked beside me, silent, his presence a steady shadow. The air around him was colder than the morning breeze outside. Controlled, measured, too still for someone who had nearly drowned hours ago. He wasn't human. Or maybe he was just a version of human I'd never met before. His men closed doors behind us, spreading out in practice formation, scanning windows, corners, hallways. It reminded me of soldiers escorting a king. A dangerous one. I wrapped my arms around myself as we reached the main room. The warmth from the fire felt like the first kind thing I'd experienced since dawn. You're shivering, Alexander said, his voice low. I'm fine. He tilted his head slightly. You keep saying that when it is clearly untrue. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Being defensive around him felt pointless. He saw through everything, my fear, my strength, my nerves. He turned to one of the men. Bring her dry clothes. Something warm. Immediately, the man vanished upstairs. I don't need. You do. Alexander's gaze held mine. Do not fight me on the necessities. A tiny spark of irritation flickered in my chest. Does anyone ever say no to you? Yes. He stepped closer, but only once. I swallowed, a terrible truth dressed as a warning. Before I could reply, one of the security men called to him from the hallway. Boss. Alexander's shoulders straightened, posture sharpening into something lethal. He stepped away from me, and suddenly the room felt colder. "What is it?" he asked. "Footage from the crash site. It came in." My pulse jumped. He turned back to me. "You stay here. Do not move from this room." It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't even a command. It was a vow, a protective cage around me. He disappeared with his men toward a closed door, and I exhaled shakily the moment he wasn't looking. This was madness. All of it. Rescuing a stranger was one thing. Discovering the stranger was a mafia boss whose enemies now wanted me dead. That was a level of chaos my life had never prepared me for. I sat on the edge of a soft leather couch, staring into the fire, trying to calm my racing thoughts. The flames danced in quiet, restless patterns, beautiful and destructive all at once. Much like the man who owned this place. The man whose life I apparently altered by accident. I wasn't sure how long I sat there before someone approached softly. It wasn't Alexander. It was the man he'd sent upstairs. "Here," he said, offering folded clothes. "He told me your size." My eyebrows lifted. How would he know my size? The man didn't smile. Alexander notices everything. A strange warmth fluttered in my chest, and I didn't like it. "Not here. Not with him." "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded stiffly and left. I changed in a small guest bathroom off the main hallway. A thick sweater, soft leggings, warm socks. They fit perfectly, of course, because apparently Alexander could deduce clothing sizes from a single glance. When I returned to the firelit room, he wasn't back yet. Voices murmured from behind the closed office door, low and sharp. Worry not at me. What if the footage showed something worse? What if the people who tried to kill him didn't just know my face, but my name, my address, everything? I hugged my knees, trying to breathe slowly. Minutes stretched long, then longer. My heart pounded with every second he didn't return. When the door finally opened, I jumped. Alexander stepped out alone. His face was colder than before. Sharper. Eyes darkened, jaw clenched. Something had happened. Something bad. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he looked at me for a long, unreadable moment, as if making sure I was still breathing. "Alexander, you will not leave this house," he said quietly. My pulse kicked hard. "What's going on?" "It's worse than I thought." I stood up slowly. "Tell me." He seemed to consider the request, as if debating how much truth a normal human could handle. Then he walked toward me, slow, deliberate steps that made the air feel thinner with each one. "The crash wasn't meant to kill me," he said. "It was meant to force me out in the open." "For what?" "So they could trace who helped me, who touched me, who pulled me from the wreckage." I slid through my veins. But why would that matter? He stopped in front of me, so close I had to tilt my head up to meet his eyes. "Because my enemies believe anyone who saves me," his voice lowered to a whisper that grazed my skin, "can be used to break me." My breath caught painfully in my lungs. "They saw you," he continued. "They are already looking. They know a woman dragged me from the water. They do not know your name yet, but they will." My knees felt weak. "And when they do," he said, "you will not stand a chance alone." Fear crashed over me, but so did something else. Confusion, anger, disbelief. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would they want me? I'm nothing to you. I'm no one." Alexander didn't blink. "You are not no one." He said it like a vow, like a line drawn in iron. And then slowly, almost painfully, his expression softened. "You saved my life," he murmured. "You went into the water for me. You fought a sinking jet with your bare hands." His eyes flicked to my wrist, where his fingers had wrapped around hours ago. "You touched death to pull me back." Heat spread in my chest. Not romantic. Not yet. Something deeper. Something terrifying. "A soul like yours," he said softly, "is rare. And valuable." My voice trembled. Valuable to who? To me. My heart stumbled. But he wasn't done. And dangerous to everyone else. I stared at him, stunned, breath shallow. "Alexander, what happens now?" I whispered. He didn't hesitate. "You stay here," he said. "With me. Under my protection. Until this is finished." "Finished how?" His expression hardened. "When the men who tried to kill me are dead." Silence swallowed the room. He stepped closer, close enough that the firelight rimmed his jaw in gold. You saved my life, he said quietly. Now I will save yours. His eyes held mine, cold and intense, but softened by something he would never admit aloud. And I do not fail, he whispered. A promise, a warning, a threat to the world, all in one breath. For the next few hours, I lived inside a world that didn't feel like mine. Men with guns patrolled the hallways. Encrypted radios crackled softly. Doors opened and closed with the precision of a military base. But in the middle of all the chaos, there was Alexander, always near, always watching, always silent until he chose not to be. I didn't know if he was protecting me or studying me. I sat on the wide couch near the fireplace while one of his men checked the perimeter. The crackling flames were comforting in a way they shouldn't have been. Nothing about this place should comfort me. And yet, it wasn't fear I felt when Alexander returned to the room. It was something stranger, sharper, a pull. He stepped inside with the kind of controlled grace only someone accustomed to power could possess. The firelight kissed the edges of his cold profile, sharp jaw, tired eyes, hair still messy from the night's chaos. But his expression softened when he saw me, only for a heartbeat, only for me. Are you warm enough? He asked. I nodded. Yes, you should sleep. I can't. He studied me for a long moment, then sat beside me, not too close, but close enough for the warmth of him to reach my skin. Your body is in shock, he murmured. If you sleep, it will help. What about you? I asked. His eyes flicked toward me. What about me? You nearly drowned. You were hypothermic. You should be resting too. I do not rest, he said calmly. Not when there is a threat. Of course he didn't. Of course the Mafia boss didn't rest. What happens now? I asked softly. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed gentle. I will deal with the men who went after my jet. Alone. No, his eyes softened. But I will not involve you in that part. I swallowed. And after? What happens to me after all this is over? He leaned back slightly, gazing at the flames. I haven't decided yet. The answer made my pulse stutter. What does that mean? It means, he said slowly, the world you lived in before last night is gone. You cannot simply return to it. Why not? I whispered. Because they know you exist. His voice was firm, final. If you leave now, they will find you. They will use you. Or kill you. My stomach dropped. So I'm trapped? No, his eyes cut to mine. You are protected. By you, I said. Protected by you. Yes. The word was soft. A vow. A chain. I stood up abruptly, needing space. This is insane. I was just trying to help someone. I didn't ask for any of this. You think I asked for a stranger to dive into a freezing lake and pull me out of my own death, he countered. He rose too, slow, controlled, powerful without trying. We stood face to face. I owe you my life, Ella, he said. But more than that, I cannot allow harm to reach you. It's not your choice. It became my choice, he said quietly, the moment you touched me in that water. My breath hitched. He stepped closer, eyes dropping to my lips then back to M. Why eyes? When you pulled me from that jet, he said, something changed. In you, I whispered. In everything. The room felt smaller, the air tighter, the fire warmer. My heart hammered. I should hate this, I whispered. Hate you. Hate being here. Do you? I swallowed. No. He exhaled slowly, as if he'd been holding his breath for hours. I am not a good man, Ella, he murmured. I know. I am cold to the world. I see that. I am dangerous. I know that too. But you, his voice softened, aching almost. You walked through fire and water to save me. The space between us dissolved. His hand rose, not touching me, just hovering near my cheek, trembling with restraint. I am soft with no one, he whispered. No one. His fingertips brushed my skin, barely, like he was afraid I might break. But you. His breath ghosted against my lips. You undo me. My knees nearly buckled. His hand cupped my jaw gently, thumb brushing my cheek, as if memorizing the shape of me. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. Tell me to step back, he murmured. I didn't. Tell me this is too much. I didn't. His forehead touched mine, his breath warm and ragged. Tell me to stop wanting you. I still didn't. Instead, I whispered the words that sealed everything. Alexander, don't stop. The sound he made was low, broken, and full of something I didn't understand, not desire, not hunger. Something deeper, something dangerous. He kissed me, not hard, not fierce, soft, a whisper of lips, a breath shared, a promise born in silence. His hand slid to the back of my neck, gentle, protective, holding me like I was the only fragile thing he'd ever touched. But before the moment could deepen, a knock shattered the air. He froze, his jaw tightened. He pulled back, every trace of softness locked away instantly as his cold mask returned. Come, he commanded. One of his men entered, eyes lowered, voice steady but tense. Boss, they found something. Alexander didn't look at me as he stepped away, but his voice, quiet, cold, lethal, filled the room. Stay here, no matter what you hear. I will come back for you. My heart pounded. Alexander. He paused in the doorway. Then he turned his head, eyes softening again for just a moment. I told you, he said softly. I do not fail. And then he was gone. Walking into a war that began the night I saved him from the sky. But deep inside my chest, buried beneath fear and uncertainty, one truth pulsed like a heartbeat. I wasn't afraid of what would happen next. I was afraid of what I'd become. To him.